February 12th, 2024, is it?
13th.
Sorry. The February 13th, 2024 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman and Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt this meeting, please either switch it to silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnicki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner? Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert? Here. Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Madam Chair.
Okay, so the first item is approval of the agenda.
I move.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Faison and seconded by Mr. Fox. I think we're ready for the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and we can move on now to the approval of the minutes from the January 23rd, 2024 meeting. Okay, Mr. Fox moves. Ms. Malala-Holly seconds that. And I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And now we're at public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone's here to speak for things that are not going to be discussed tonight on the agenda, you can come forward at this time. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to the preliminary site plan. There's a proposed Premier Academy Troy Daycare Center and Preschool on the northwest corner of Crooks and Waddles, PIN 88-20-17-476-056, 0-57 and 61, Section 17, zoned Neighborhood Node I zoning district.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to disclose to my colleagues and the city attorney's office that my daughter works for a competing daycare about 2 miles away, so I don't believe it's a conflict of interest, but if my colleagues in the city attorney's office believe it is, I'd be willing to recuse myself from discussion, so.
Does anyone have any issues?
No. No.
All right, I don't either, so I think we're good. Thank you for letting us know that. Okay, so, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to note prior to the meeting, the petitioners provided me with a PowerPoint presentation that they want to present after Mr. Carlisle's presentation.
Sounds good, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Carlisle.
Yeah, thank you and good evening. Before you tonight is a proposed daycare facility. It's located at the northwest corner of Crooks and Waddles. Currently, it's 3 parcels which will be combined if this project is approved. The site is zoned neighborhood node, site type B. We know that childcare is a permitted use. In front of you outlines the site in red. The building itself is outlined in blue, and the green area outlined is the proposed play area. It's a one-story freestanding 14,000 square foot daycare center. The building includes a number of classrooms as well as a lobby, a laundry room, a kitchen, a gym, and an outdoor playground. We do note there are currently 4 other Premier Academy facilities in Michigan, and those have been provided with locations to the Planning Commission. Before we go into more details about the site plan, it's worth noting that the site is greatly encumbered by a significant amount of natural resource. Specifically, there is a drain that runs kind of the northern part of the site. That's outlined in green. It includes a wetland, as well as the area highlighted in yellow, and between the two yellow lines is a 100-year designated floodplain. The applicant is developing and grading within the 100-year floodplain primarily to locate their parking lot. However, to do so, they are required to obtain a letter of map amendment, it's called a LOMA, from FEMA, and that would be due and required as part of final site plan approval and engineering approval. They will be required to obtain the LOMA and the wetland permit if necessary. If they're not able, obviously, to obtain it, obviously the project would not move forward, but we typically require that as part of the final engineering and the final site plan. With regards to access and circulation and site plan itself, the plan does meet all the form-based requirements, include build-to line, setbacks, and height. We do note that there is one point of access. This is off of Waddles. Access and circulation has been reviewed and approved by both the fire department and engineering, including this engineering consultant for traffic, which is OHM. The applicant is providing 44 parking spaces. We do note by the ordinance calculations, 27 parking spaces are required, so it is overparked by 61% of what the ordinance requires. One of the items that we addressed with the applicant was to reduce parking and impact into the wetland and the floodplains. Specifically, we note there are approximately 11 spaces north of the building and north of the play area. We do note that removing those 11 spaces would allow a reduction in the amount of grading within the floodplain and the impact upon the drain and wetlands. However, the applicant notes that based on their experience and their other facilities, that they do need a certain amount of parking, and the parking they have provided or shown is what they feel is sufficient. They did provide a summary depicting the average number of arrivals and departures at their other locations, and found that, again, the 44 spaces is what they need to run their facility. One item you'll note is that there is no separate drop-off and pickup area. However, again, they note that based on their operations, they do not need a drop-off area. They note that since the children are mostly young age, that parents walk them into the building, so they'll actually come into the site, park their car, walk the child in the building, and then leave. They do note that they are going to designate certain spots as reserved for pickup and drop-off. We note that the site meets all the landscape requirements as well as the lighting requirements. You'll note that the hard yellow line is actually a retaining wall. That retaining wall is necessary to accommodate the parking that's going to be located within the floodplain. Obviously, that will go through a full engineering review to ensure that that retaining wall is sufficient to retain the parking lot. The proposed elevations are in front of you. It's primarily a metal panel type building with a significant amount of glass. The top elevation is the elevation south, facing south, so that's the elevation along Waddles. The elevation at the bottom is the north elevation. That's the one facing the parking lot and the floodplain. The elevation at the top is the elevation east, it's facing Crooks. And the elevation on the bottom is the west elevation that's facing the parking lot. Again, you can see a significant amount of glass and transparency in the building. Proposed renderings, the view on the left is the view of the front and side from the intersection of Crooks and Waddles. And the view on the right is a view of the front side moving a little bit farther down Waddles Road. Left is a view from Crooks, and right is a view from the entrance off of Waddles. So in summary, we're asking the Planning Commission to discuss, one, allowing the parking to exceed the 20% parking minimum. As part of the discussion, we are encouraging the applicant and the Planning Commission should discuss the 11 parking spaces north side of the building, as well as the Planning Commission should discuss compliance with Section 6.08 of the Site Plan Review Standards. We do note that if the Planning Commission does recommend approval, the conditions upon the final site plan submittal should include obtaining a LOMA prior to final engineering, obtaining an Eagle wetland permit if necessary, as well as providing bicycle parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Does anyone on the commission have questions for the planning department? Yes, Mr. Fox?
If the 11 parking spaces were removed at the northern end of the property, would they still need a LOMA from FEMA?
Yeah, they will.
Okay.
in terms of where, how much and where, I don't know exactly, but by removing the 11, in our opinion, so, does this work? Yeah, so if they remove the 11, I mean, they could significantly not have to grade it within this area, which is where a significant part of the floodplain and wetland comes down into the site. Again, how much, I don't know. They would still be required to grade within the floodplain at some point, but it should be less than what they're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yep, Mr. Lambert?
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle, I got one easy question and two more difficult questions for you. The first
I'll
one-
take the easy one and
Okay,
pass the hard ones to Brent.
Brent, okay, all right. The first one is, you noted in your report that there's 2 bicycle spots that are supposed to be provided, but you couldn't find them on any of the maps. Do you think it maybe will be covered in their PowerPoint?
I hope so. I mean, they have indicated they provide the bike parking. We went over all the site plan sheets and we couldn't find it. Again, it's pretty minor. I think they can add those without any problem, but they can certainly address it as part of their presentation.
Okay, the more difficult questions are about those parking spots in the north. You've been consulting with various communities around the state of Michigan. Do you ever see facilities using pervious parking service to help deal with some of the flood waters or the water runoff, so that maybe you could use something like that to solve the problem at those northern parking spots?
I certainly have. Typically, those are in a municipality by municipality decision by the engineering department. Some have allowed them, and some have some concerns with them with regards to what maintenance, snow removal, how actually over time impervious they really are because they get filled up with stuff, and how they're maintained. It is certainly an option that if the Planning Commission does want to allow them to keep those 11, that we could further explore with regards to using that product. I will note that even if they do an impervious type surface there, they're still going to have to do significant grading and work in the floodplain location that they wouldn't necessarily have to do if they were to remove those 11 spaces.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one is, if mitigation is required because of the drain back there on the north side, since the city doesn't have a wetland protection ordinance, would the mitigation under state law could be anywhere within the state, or could we as a planning commission say we want to see some kind of mitigation on that site?
Be difficult to do mitigation on that site because I don't know where they would do it, because they're already reducing the amount of wetlands on the site anyways. We could certainly work with Eagle to ensure it's somewhere within Troy, perhaps, or even within the watershed. But in terms of what Eagle would require, I'd have to defer to them. But we could certainly work with them.
Great. Thank you.
I think because it's state regulated, it's going to be an Eagle decision.
Okay.
But it's something that we could communicate with Eagle.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Faison?
Thank you. And I think you mentioned that OHM looked at the site circulation. I was curious if they looked at the impact of the traffic of the site, the incremental traffic on Waddles, and the ingress and egress, and how that would work at that
They did look at it. They didn't make any comments of concern. Certainly, if the Planning Commission does have some concern, we can go back and address that. I will note with this use, and the applicant can provide much more color and context to it. In terms of uses, daycares are very low generating traffic use than what could be there. You have peak periods in the morning, an hour or two here or there. You have some peak periods in the afternoon. But in terms of other comparable uses, even office, even residential or retail, it's a much less impactful use from a traffic standpoint than what other permitted uses that would permit in this district.
Understood, thanks. And I was thinking about the peak times that you just
Yeah, the applicant
referenced.
is here and from their experience can give more details with that, and we can certainly ask the traffic engineer to look at it again if there are concerns.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Planning Department? Okay, then we'll call the applicant up.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I am Jeff Klatt with Krieger Klatt Architects, 2120 East 11 Mile Road. This is Ms. Jen Damon of Premier Academy and JS Capital. So we're also here with our the JS Capital development team. We have John Hauser, a PEA here as well, and the current property owner, Mr. Kamal Shuhaib, is here to answer any questions you may have. So as was mentioned, we are requesting site plan approval for our new child care center For those of you that are unfamiliar with Premier Academy, they are a locally owned and locally operated childcare and preschool. They have 4 current locations with the 5th one under construction here shortly. So Oakland Township, Rochester Hills, Northville, Macomb Township, and then again, the new one there that will be under construction here in Shelby Township shortly. So with their other locations, they become integral partners with the communities, and they hope to do so here in Troy as well. So we have a presentation. Mr. Carlisle's is excellent, so we can be even a bit more brief. But Ms. Damon will kick off the presentation with a discussion regarding Premier Academy, then I can address the architectural questions. Thank you.
Hi, so Premier Academy has been open for 15 years, opening in 2009. Again, we're a locally operated and owned private preschool and childcare center. Our students can start as early in their infant years as 6 weeks and through the preschool timeframe. We have degreed and certified teachers that run all of our classrooms, and looking again to hope and expand and open here in Troy, the Troy community. Are you able to go to the next slide? Sorry. So again, our students start in their infant and toddler years. We have nurturing classrooms that are specifically designed to provide a stimulating environment for the little ones to explore and learn. Our teachers specifically trained to evaluate and adjust their lessons plans accordingly for each stage of development with the children. We offer both traditional preschool curriculum as well as Montessori. Our traditional offers students to be learning letters, sounds, counting, number concepts, calendar skills, group work, writing, and recognizing names. Our Montessori method is a mixed age group. This is ages 3 through 5, and this is kind of following more of the true nature of the child. The students learn and grow at the rate themselves and that their teachers are comfortable with. Some facts about Premier. Our typical day starts with about 3 to 4 childcare teachers that are opening the building at 6:30, and we have before care that runs from 6:30 to 9. Our core curriculum hours are 9 to 3, and then we also offer aftercare from 3 to 6:30. A portion of our students do get picked up between that 11:30 and 1 o'clock time frame, with minimal pickup between 1 and 3 due to the student's nap time. The pickup typically starts around 3 and is spaced out until the aftercare ends at 6:30. So this really creates a staggered flow of traffic throughout the day, and the big piece being that 80% of our students live in a 3-mile radius, so not adding a ton of traffic. Parents are already passing by on their way to and from work.
Oh, thank you, Jen. So again, I know Mr. Carlisle already touched upon this, but this is just a broad brush or an aerial view of the site. So we're located at that'd be the northwest corner of Crooks and Roddles Road. That's the yellow highlighted area there. Sorry, Brent, next one. And this is more of a micro site plan here. So 2.2 acre site, we're zoned neighborhood nodes, and neighborhood nodes all around us. There's a brief section of R1B to the northeast right there. Thank you, Brent. Just a view of the site, that'd be to the northwest from the corner. In the site plan, we could touch upon a few of those questions that you had. So the large dark gray rectangle, that represents the building footprint located at the southeast corner of the site, and that was primarily to be compatible with the neighborhood nodes district. So we're right on that streetscape. We located the entry point to be as far from the intersection as possible along North Waddles Road, and it's a fairly simple flow. I mean, we analyzed an intersection or an opening at Crooks Road, but the lane drain really prohibits that, so it made more sense to locate that in North Waddles. And again, just a simple flow through the parking lot area. We have parking spaces along the west-hand side, and they do loop around the building, and we'll touch upon parking in a minute. Number 5 up there, that is the outdoor play area, which is required by the ordinance, and we have that at all of our locations too. It's a pretty integral piece to their program. Number 10, that indicates the bicycle parking, so we do have that. We did address that comment, so thank you for that. We did pick that up. One thing to point out too is that the primary entry is really, that would be at the southwest corner of the building. You can kind of see it there, just above where the number 2 is. That's our primary entry point to the facility, and we have floor plans we can walk you through that describe the general layout. So our engineers are very sensitive to the wetlands and the floodplain here, so they're very careful when they laid this site out. And if you have any questions about that, Mr. Hauser can address it, but they were very sensitive to accommodate that. When it comes to parking, I understand the thought behind land banking the 11 spaces, but for this location, it just won't work. They'll have problems from day one if we eliminate the 11 spaces. They know that just through time-tested data. They own and operate 4 going on 5 other locations. And most developers, it's usually a bit different. We walk into other communities, the parking's too much. So we're trying to right-size it. Here, it's too few. So we know that magic number sweet spot is right about the 44 that we're requesting. So most developers don't want to put that in and pay for it. So in this case, we're willing to pay for it up front because we know it's going to be needed. So it's just a fact based on the staff they have and based on the families that will be in the school. So I believe that's it for the site. Landscape plan, again, a very comprehensive plan. We do have green belts that front North Wattles and Crooks. There's integral landscape within the parking lot area as well, too. We meet the tree mitigation standards, and as note number 2 up there says, the 60% site landscaping is provided compared to the 20% required. So we feel we have a very good site plan here and a good landscape plan as well. Floor plan, so again, it's oriented with north to the top. In that lower left-hand corner, that's that lobby area we spoke about. That's where the primary families will enter the building. It also makes sense for the parking on that side too, from a child safety standpoint. They're traversing the parking lot. We want that entry to be right by those parking spaces. And then it's just a simple run of classrooms around the perimeter. The Michigan LARA code requires that each classroom have an exit out, so we do have a doorway out. The good thing about that too is it provides more of a storefront presence along both Crooks and North Wattles too, to add all that daylight, with really more of exit doors for safety. But we do have those doors along both facades. And the other unique feature they have is a large gym in the upper left-hand corner that'll egress out to that play area too. Then exterior materials, these were already touched upon. So again, it's fairly modern by design. A large glass curtain wall in the front kind of evokes the shape of a lot of residential dwellings with the gable roof line, comforting to the kids. But again, the materials are very, very simple, very clean and modern in appearance. The next slide indicates what those are. So we have, standing seam metal roof that'll kind of wrap around that gable feature, ACM modular metal panels that are on the bulk of the building around it. So again, a colorful, playful palette, but a bit modern in touch. Other views around the site, that's the entry component right there. So a fun circular window, a little awning that comes out to protect, give a little bit of coverage there from the elements. Again, just a lot of glass. Bring a lot of daylight into the building. We think it'll look attractive along the streetscape too. That's a view in the parking lot towards Crooks and North Wattles. So that's the playground area that'll be fenced in. It's another view from Crooks. You see those storefronts that are popped in there. And similar view too along North Wattles from the corner. These are interior views from some of the other locations. Again, very high quality, very, very comforting build out inside. Very high-end materials. A lot of daylight you can see. That's the gym area right there with high ceilings. Just fun, playful spaces. And then I know and then in our packet, we did submit some parking data and traffic data, and Jen can touch upon that too. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is kind of our facts and features for the Rochester Hills campus. Again, touching on that, a majority of our families do live within that 1 to 5 mile radius. The bulk of them being within that first mile, 80 families, 39 families within 3, and 32 families within 5. So the next couple slides highlight that data for each of our campuses. Our Oakland campus has 63 families within that first mile, 55 within 3, 45 within 5. And then again, Northville, 46 families within that first mile, 39 in 3, and 19 families within 5. So this is our typical 12-hour traffic count. And as you can see, opening with that before care, opening at 6:30, you see some of that before care traffic that's staggered throughout. And then our core hours being that 9 to 3 for our curriculum, and then kind of staggered as parents will begin to pick up as early as, that 3 o'clock time spot when curriculum concludes, and then our aftercare until 6:30. And then these are just our counts, by the hour for each campus, just kind of highlighting, how traffic is coming and going. So this is our Rochester Hills campus that has 37 spaces. We really could have used a couple more spaces just with staffing. Really could have used a couple more for this campus. Our next campus after this one is our Northville campus, and this is our perfectly parked campus. 43 is really like our sweet spot. Our next campus there is Macomb with 55 spaces. This is a larger, campus. 55 works for this building. And then our next campus is Oakland. This was our first campus built 15 years ago with 73 spaces, which is a lot, very overparked.
Oh, sorry, this was just a placeholder that shows, we do have a retaining wall at the north end of our site, and we didn't provide any data on that, so it's really more of a unilock type structure. So what you see there, above the water is what that material could look like. It's not as large or tall as that, but just to give you an idea of what that is. So just in case any questions came about what that would be, that's what it would look like, generally speaking, without the water and without that building. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and stay up there because I'm going to ask the commissioners if anyone has any questions for the applicant. Yeah, Mr. Faison.
I had one question. You mentioned the staggered times when people come and leave. How does that work? Is it an agreement with the parent, or is that just the natural flow of how people come in and leave and later in the day?
It's a natural flow with, work hours,
Okay.
the core hours being the 9 to 3, wanting our students in the building for those time periods. Some parents need the before care and the after care, which, we love that we offer. So some take advantage of that and they come, as early as 6, but trying to get there by 9:30, which allows for a big window.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for coming and thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the details that you went over. I have two questions that I'm going to start with. The first question is, in terms of the traffic flow. Now, when my child was attending a Montessori, the aides from the classroom would be outside the building to greet the child and the parent. So the cars would come in, they would stop briefly, the child would be assisted from the car, and the same would happen in the evening too, or whenever the child was getting picked up. And then the car would take a roundabout turn and then exit. In your plan here, I did not see such a traffic flow happening. So I'm a little concerned about, I'm looking at the data that you have provided, Oakland, Rochester Hills, and Northville traffic flow. And in the morning, 7:30 to 8:30, that's probably a sweet spot for these locations. There are a lot more cars arriving, okay? So there's 68 in one location, 63 in the other. And the same is the case in the evening hours between 3:30 and 4:30. How do you see this traffic flow in this particular location?
Was your question more related to like a drop-off? Because you mentioned that there was an aide that came out to
Yes.
basically greet you and to receive
Yes.
your
Is that
child.
going to be the case? And or are parents expected to park and then walk their child into the facility?
Yes, so they would park and then walk their child into the facility.
Which means we are looking at probably about 5-10 minutes of parking, of that particular spot getting occupied.
Yes.
I can join in too. Hi, I'm Angela. I also work for Premier Academy. Jen and I, the schools are our baby. If you actually want to scroll to the Northville campus, I might be able to explain a little bit better, just since that one, the parking. So essentially when parents come in, I know what you're referring to. We have staff that I think worked at Brookfield who had very similar drop off and pick up, and aides would come in and out. We don't do any of that. All of our parents will park, so like in our Northville campus, they'll park in a space designated, and they take that 5 minutes, they get out, they come in, they drop their kids off, get them situated at their cubby, drop off directly to parents. We're never seeing, we've done significant parking studies at each of our campuses as far as tracking the flows and the patterns. We're never seeing more than 4 to 5 cars stacking as far as dropping off or within that loop. So with the 4 to 5 parents at any given time, spaced out 5-minute increments throughout the hour, we've never gotten a backup as far as any of our campuses go. The parents have significant time. They can come in, get their little one situated. A lot of them will do breakfast in the morning, give kisses, hugs, and farewells, and then they're off. But so our Northville campus, we only have one entrance and exit of each of our campuses. We do have kind of that roundabout look at our original as well as our Rochester Hills. We've kind of gone away from that a little bit, just because almost in the roundabout, it's a little bit more congested, and we feel that people just can park and walk in. We've got all of the closest spots reserved for our families. Staff always will park at the furthest away from the building, and we're not seeing and have not seen any backup of vehicles within those times.
My next question is related to the over-parking. 27 spaces as needed, but 44 provided. I understand there must be a rationale because you must have done your studies on that thing, but I did notice on one of the slides, you have 30 staff and potentially 196, you will have 30 staff and potentially 196 children in this facility, correct?
It really, yeah, I believe that's the number of the children in that facility, as well as the staff. It's based on ages. Some years, we have a higher infant toddler number of children enrolled. It kind of depends. Some were heavier on preschool and up. It just kind of goes and ebbs and flows in different years. So the ratios for our staff to student ratio vary based on age. So it can, from time to time vary, but you'll expect like 2 teachers in our preschool classrooms that will hold 20 children. Usually 8 to 12 infant and toddlers, that would be with 3 staff in each of those rooms. And then where, the concern for our end as far as the 20-something spaces, we have staff that come in midday that will relieve, do lunch breaks, and then so at the middle point of our day, we've got extra staff to give that relief to our current teachers that need to get the lunch break in, and they need to go and, before leaving for the day, as well as making sure we maintain spaces for parents coming and going. So we love to have more green space if possible, less parking, less pavement, but we know operationally the 28, it's not going to work, and we don't want to have problems for the surrounding neighborhoods. We want to be as seamless in the community that we can. So with that, our Rochester Hills campus, there's sometimes that it gets tight in the morning, and we're like, oh, we really could have used a couple more spaces. So that's where our Northville came next, and 43 really just works nicely for our operation. We don't see that back up. We aren't overparked because we hate the concrete too, and we can have green space for the kids, the surrounding community. That's where we would love to reduce, but we don't want to cause operational issues, and know that that's a perfect number for what we need.
Yeah, no, understandable. I looked at the 30 staff that was on one of the slides. That tells me that even if all 30 were to park,
right,
then you will still need some additional. Okay,
right,
thank
with
you for
the parents.
explanation.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yep.
Just a quick
Mr. Khan?
comment. Could you give us like a traffic flow by, you gave it, in your presentation, but so by numbers, but what happens in the morning at 6:30? How many staff come in? Then how many parents come in? You just give us that kind of account with actual people.
At 6:30, you'll expect somebody at our front desk. So as far as our kitchen staff, and maybe 1 to 2 aides. So maybe 3 to 4 staff members at 6:30. They're kind of getting classrooms opened, cleaning supplies prepared, getting things set for the day. Usually we'll have very minimal children between 6:30 and 7. And then as we start getting closer to 7, we'll start to see the pickup of kids coming into the building. Really, kind of as mentioned, we're probably seeing 5-ish families right around every 5 to 10 minutes that are coming in and out. And then as we increase, we'll have our 7 o'clock staff that comes in. And then sometimes we'll do a 7:15 to 4:15 staff member, a 7:30. So then we're slowly picking up on staff, until we hit that 9 o'clock mark when all of our teachers have arrived for the day. And that kind of keeps up the pace of ratio, moving in with making sure we're compliant as far as state regulations and having enough coverage for the kids, and then, watching our operational costs and things of that nature. So as far as the staff goes, and kids, we're probably seeing them come in, 15-minute increments throughout leading up to that 9 o'clock, as late as 9:30. As much as we want them all there by 9, we have parents with work from home schedules or jumping on a meeting, and, it really is that full 3-hour window of, 5-ish families every 5 to 10 minutes.
But the staff, what's their schedule of arriving and departing?
It really depends on the children that we have and the flows of when they're coming in, but we've got probably, we're going to have a staff member coming in for 7:15 to 4:15 in our infant toddler wing, as well as in our preschool. So let's call it 2 to 3 staff members, coming in every 15 minutes or so, really depending. 7:15, 7:30, 8 to 5. Staff members will come in 8:15 to 5:15, 8:30 to 5:30, and just a couple every kind of incremental time until we're the full kind of flow. Right around there, yeah. Each campus is a little different.
There's a variable.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Tagle?
How many parking spots do you have for parents?
As far as the parent parking goes, at our 2 original campuses, we have that circle drive that we can fit right around 5 to 6 in that, as well as we keep all of these front spaces at our Northville campus. We leave those generally reserved for parents. That's up on the screen. And then as far as the newest, the Troy campus, the closest 5 spaces we usually will reserve for that drop-off and pickup window.
That's worked for you?
Yeah, yep, that's perfect.
They're there and the frequency of...
Exactly, yep.
Comment about the architecture. It's a wonderfully looking building, very handsome.
Oh,
Very
thank
nice
you.
job.
Appreciate that, thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, Mr. Lambert.
Just to follow up to Mr. Tagle's comments, because I know Mr. Carlisle wants us to talk about the site plan review design standards. So it looks like from an architectural point of view, yeah, I agree that it would be a nice addition to that corner as far as fitting in, preventing monotony there. And also I'm happy to see, probably because the city requires it, but that the sidewalk is going to be expanded, so, because it's really a narrow sidewalk around the building right now, so it will look much better from a pedestrian point of view. I still have some concerns about those 11 parking spaces on the north and their possible impact on the floodplain. I don't know whether or not you've looked at some kind of a pervious use for that parking spots to make sure that it doesn't have an adverse impact on the floodplain, or maybe some additions of a rain garden or something along that line. But have you looked at some of those ways of helping to deal with mitigating some of the impact of those parking spots?
This is a perfect introduction for Mr. Hauser, but my understanding here from a floodplain standpoint that it's really a balancing act. If the 11 spaces are there or not, we're not really altering the volume in that floodplain, it's just being shifted. So if those spaces are there or not, it's really a net zero. But I'll let Mr. Hauser explain that. He's more adept at that than me.
Yeah, good evening. My name's John Hauser. I'm with PEA Group. I just wanted to clarify one thing. The floodplain and the wetlands kind of get mixed. A lot of times they're the same in the same area. The wetland, we are not filling in the wetland. So we're not mitigating for any wetland fill, but we are filling in the floodplain. And so north of the drain is where we're proposing our compensating cut to account for the fill. If we eliminate the 11 spaces, like Mr. Carlisle said, we would still need to fill within the floodplain. What reduction that would be, maybe 50%, but we would still have that process. So if we're filling 500 cubic yards, we're cutting 500 cubic yards, let's say then we reduce those 11 spots, which obviously these people have told us would hamper their business. Maybe it's 250 cubic yards. So that number really doesn't change. As far as reducing the runoff per the city standards and county standards, we've got a 100-year underground detention system, which is stored at an elevation above the 100-year floodplain. So the 100-year floodplain elevation I believe is 733. I could have that first number wrong. But we're storing from 733, I think we've got 3-foot diameter. I'd have to check again. But so that's what we're doing along with a water quality unit to compensate for what every development in the city needs to do, quite honestly. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly.
So in your opinion, then, adding those parking spaces, you've created enough mitigation so it won't have an adverse impact on the floodplain or water runoff?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have to.
Okay.
From FEMA standard, the city's going to make sure we're going to do it, and we'll have the permits to prove it once we go through the process.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep, Mr. Fox?
Yeah, so a quick question, kind of alluding to the FEMA approval as well. So let's just say hypothetically, you know, we approve everything here and you guys end up going, you got to get the approval from FEMA. What happens if FEMA doesn't approve? Like, is there a backup plan if those 11 spaces aren't necessarily blocked by this body, but are blocked by another, like a federal body? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I would get fired.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that if it turned out, the good news is on the north side of that drain, if you went back to the site plan, we needed that land, honestly, to make this compensation work. So we've actually, since we've done the grading plan, again, this is a preliminary site plan, so it's not fine-tuned exactly, but we've got it close. We're comfortable. We're over the number as far as the compensation that we're doing. We eliminated some of the features just north of the play structure, so we've got enough room on the north side to make that compensation.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would you be so kind to ask all the speakers to sign in, please?
Yes, of course.
If they haven't done so already.
Oh, they haven't? Okay.
Thank you.
I wasn't watching. I know you guys all introduced yourselves, but yes, please sign in on the sheet. I have a couple of questions and comments as well. I happen to think it's a really nice building, and I think it fits the area quite well. And I wish it was around when my 5 kids were all that age, and I could have used it, but they're older now. A couple of questions. One of them has to do with lighting, photometrics. And I gather, I have an idea now of what your hours of operation are, but in general, we're all used to that being a pretty dark corner. So it's going to be lit up, starting at around 6:30, probably, when it's dark in the winter hours. But then what happens at 6:30? Do the lights come down, or you're not lighting the whole thing up, are you, all night? I don't know who the question's for.
Yeah, great question. I do believe we submitted a photometric study, and we'll make sure we adhere to all the ordinance regulations regarding that. Great question. I'm sure those could be on some type of sensor or timer if the building's not occupied. Could those lights go down? Sure. I'm sure there'll be some lights on minimally for security around the property, but that's a great question. I'm sure we can work with the city staff team to regulate the light when the building's not in use or later hours. But generally speaking, we'll comply with all ordinance regulations related to lighting. And I do believe our photometric study shows that.
Okay. I know there was a photometric study. I was thinking about it because it's such a dark corner now. I'm assuming that all those, parking lot lights and everything doesn't have to be on until 10 o'clock at night when no one's there.
It's actually an ordinance requirement that they're required to dim the lights after technical hours. So, yeah, that's something we'll work on. They will put them on a timer so that they will be dimmed.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Crowley.
And then, so a couple of things that are of concern to me, because I actually live about a mile from here. That intersection gets pretty busy, and so I am worried about the circulation going in off of, if you're heading westbound on Waddles and you're turning in, I'm worried about the stacking cars, particularly because the entrance is so close to Waddles. And so so there's that issue. And then another issue would be when the cars are leaving, I believe there really needs to be 2 lanes exiting, one right turn lane and one left turn, because you're going to get cars stacked waiting for the people trying to turn left going east onto Waddles, because there's a light there and that gets backed up way beyond that entranceway. So those things are concerning to me. Another thing is, I have concerns about just the circulation within. I think I have a much better understanding now, because really it sounds like the majority of those parking spots are really your employees. I think I noted you said there's probably like 36 of the spots are taken by employees, and you're really only using the front parking spots to park and walk into the building?
That's correct. All of our campuses now have very similar setup. We actually have our Rochester Hills campus is at the corner of Tinkin and Adams, which is probably, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Rochester area, but very much so the busiest intersection. The same concerns were made when we were going through planning there. And with the staggered, I mean, what we're seeing is that people are driving the absolute safest when they've got their babies in the car. Our parents are very cautious, courteous, and the one way in and out is how we have it at all of our facilities. That's working for us. I get the concern. We did push it as far as possible from the intersection just to try to alleviate any stress that would be coming from that traffic. But as far as the concern goes, you know, we don't see the backup. You know, our parents are in and out, and in a really kind of efficient manner. I should have had an aerial of our one campus, but very, very much so. Tinkin and Adams, right across from Adams High School, kitty corner from Adams High School, and their junior high right there as well. But we're very minimal.
Because I'm just seeing, I'm looking at a page, the page that's sort of just a drawing. Yeah, I guess that one, that's good enough. But, you know, as you come in and there's those first spots, I guess those are, you know, disabled parking spots, and then it goes on. But if people are pulling in and out at the time that someone's trying to pull in, those are the busy parking spots right there.
Yeah.
And so it could cause a backup, I would feel.
If you pull to our Rochester Hills campus, you can kind of see the very similar setup, that we've got the spaces exactly right to the road, to the sidewalk, just kind of as we have it here. Maybe it will help paint the picture a little bit.
Just one quick thing to point out too, sorry. We did provide a deceleration lane, see where number 2 is right there. That'll help with some of that, you're concerned with pulling into the property. So that doesn't exist right now. That's a new decel lane. That'll help with that, your concerns entering the property.
And that said it was about 2 to 3 car lengths?
I believe so, John.
Yeah, I would estimate 3 to 4.
Okay, I remember it. So what about the exiting, having 2 lanes there? I mean, it widens as you come out. Is there a way to have a right turn lane and somebody to, you know, a place where the person who wants to go left can go, but the people who want to turn right can get out next to them? Is there room for that based on this design?
I think the way that it's designed right now, you could have 1, maybe 2 cars that are stacked trying to turn left and still allow full right turn. But just with the geometry of the site and you could stack 2 trying to turn left with still allowing right turns out.
Okay. And the current campus now is similar, is the same as this, the 1 in and the 1 out.
Okay. Did you ever give any thought, one of my thoughts would be to flip the building to go to line Crooks instead, and that way, and I was thinking you could move the entrance to the other side, not open to Crooks, you know, not open up, but just bring people off the road and have them do that circle thing, add a circle up top, and kind of go the other way, and then have it be a little bit more circular, and maybe even put like a divide in the parking lot and have it be more flowing.
While our architects can probably speak to the site layout a little bit better, there were major challenges with this site. It's been as is, you know, for quite some time in a very busy, wonderful community for many reasons. And we tried every layout you can think of to make this as seamless and as efficient as possible. And this is kind of where we landed. I know, with the floodplain and all different site challenges and maintaining, certain elevations, that this was the best that we could get it. And we played with many, many different approaches.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. You can have a seat and we'll, this isn't a public hearing tonight, but if there are people here, we will open it up for public comment. So everyone gets 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to speak, right, Mr. Savant? And you'll set the timer? So just make sure if you do come, want to make a public comment, you sign in and introduce yourselves.
Sorry, I'm blocking public comment.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Rauch, and I live in Woodland subdivision nearby. And I'll try and keep my comments to 3 minutes, but if I run over, I'll ask if I can use some of my wife's time. I provided a letter to the Planning Commission. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to look at that, and I won't go into too much detail. I'll try and just hit the high points and request that that be a part of the record, part of the minutes. My specific concerns really are twofold. Traffic that you've talked about. Some things that I think I'd like to point out. Mr. Krent had asked about arrival times of staffing. And the concern that I have is when you look at the 7:30 to 8:30, the 7:30 to 8:30 hour, with 44 spaces, they have provided you with the number of people that would be arriving. There'll be 12 people from 6:30 to 7:30 arriving that are not leaving. And from 7:30 to 8:30, there's going to be 10. And that's using the capacity for Oakland, which was 215, and Rochester Hills was similar numbers. They had 7 the first hour and 8 the second that weren't leaving, so that's got to be staffing. So if you look at this period from 7:30 to 8:30, they'll have 19, if you take the middle number between the two, 19 staff on site from 44 spaces, leaving 25 spaces, 25 spaces remaining to park. And they've got 65 cars coming within that hour. I think that if you look at it from the hour, yeah, maybe it'll work, but in reality, if you've got people starting work at the same time, if they're living in the area, now you've narrowed that window down, and these numbers could be within 30 minutes that 60 cars are coming in, or if you just divide the 65, you got 32 cars coming in within a 30-minute period. So my concern is they're not sufficient stacking. And what concerns me even more is with people having to park, and they can't really drop off their kids very easily if they have to park, and you've got the entrance at the entrance of the parking lot, all the activity is coming at that one spot. And if cars are parking there to drop off their kids, they're the ones that are going to be leaving and backing out and blocking lanes. So you really need to have some kind of stacking. The area that they have for deceleration lane on Waddles is 25 feet of stacking. That's the width of a car. So that's just over a length of a car. So you really don't have much ability to stack cars before you get into the parking area. The eastbound traffic with the left turn lane at Crooks, it backs up past the entrance. So you're going to have potentially people that are getting into that left turn lane thinking they're turning left at Crooks and not, and they're going to the academy, or they're blocking at the academy.
I'm sorry,
Can I use her time?
is up. I don't recall, we talked about this in the bylaws. Are they allowed to give their time? I'm sorry, I don't know offhand.
I
think we were supposed to establish that before we began our public comment. So you're the chair, you can permit it or not permit it.
And, okay, we don't vote on it, well, I'll go ahead and allot the
I don't need the full 3 minutes.
Okay.
My point is that with that, 65 cars or 30, if it's the 30 minutes, half of them coming in at 25 car spaces, it's not going to work. The other point that the lady so graciously made is that the parents are cautious. So, having to take their kids in and be cautious and take time, it can take a fair amount of time that they're having to park there. The other concern is their examples, their other facilities have either a turnaround for dropping and lining up and stacking cars on site, or they've got 2 entrances and exits, or in the fourth option, they've got the ability to drive around the building. So there's plenty of room for stacking in their other operations. I'm told that some of them do have problems with cars backing out on the street, and somebody else can speak to that. My last concern was the 100-year floodplain. The area where I'm at, upstream of this, floods beyond the 100-year floodplain up to my property line. I've provided evidence of that in previous examples. So my concern is that they provide sufficient so that we're not having problems with backing up further. I believe that this is could be a valuable addition to our community. I think it's compatible. Quite frankly, I think they just don't have enough land to do what they really want to do and need to do to be able to provide stacking on site and not have a problem. But if there is a problem, it'll be horrible for the community. And I ask that you guys be the ones that have a plan that's brought to you that you're satisfied with, that meets all the requirements. And thanks for the additional time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Lipinski. I'm a resident of Woodlands of Troy as well. I'm here representing myself, but I'm also here as president of the Woodlands of Troy HOA, so I'm representing the members of our board of directors as well tonight. We're going to try and consolidate this into my 3 minutes so we can give you time to go home. We welcome this development. I want to start by saying that I think this can be an asset to the community if done properly. We are going to ask you tonight to deny this petition for a couple of reasons that you already talked about, the traffic issues and the potential flooding. Those are big concerns to our community, and we would like to see another plan filed that can properly address that. If you take a look at the other sites that Premier handles, they've got turnaround capabilities, they've got ingress, egress at multiple places, and it's not the corner of Waddles and Crooks. A number of you walked that property, I think, with a number of us homeowners a couple of years ago, and that was a Saturday morning, and you commented on the traffic. Mr. Roush provided pictures in his letter of a typical Monday. If you came home tonight and you were trying to go east on on Waddles to go north on Crooks, you were backed up about a quarter mile past the entrance to the Woodlands of Troy subdivision. Now compound that with people trying to turn left into the academy because you're going to pass it on the way, or people trying to turn left out of that facility, they're never going to be able to turn left to go eastbound on Crooks. So we think there's some serious issues. We do think that this should be redeveloped so that there's more of a flow of an ingress egress to relieve some of that traffic. Additionally, I think there should be a traffic study done. We're not even taking into account the other buildings that have been approved at the Hills West, which is the southeast corner of that. That's 2 more apartment buildings going in. So we're adding more and more traffic, and we're looking at it in a vacuum. We're not looking at it in its totality. Additionally, I know I'm running out of time, so the floodplain is a concern. We have houses that, as much as Jerry said, our backyards flood when it rains. We have several houses that have had flooding within their lower levels, one multiple times, one a third time just recently. So it is a real issue. We know the city has tried to do things. We know the county has tried to do things, but the lane drain is still a problem. We just want to make sure that any plan, especially when it's going to have to be graded to this extent. I don't know if any of you looked at this property, but it's below grade already at the corner of Waddles and Crooks, and it slopes off quite substantially as it goes back to the north and to the west. So this is going to be graded substantially. I just want to make sure that the site plan takes into account any of that runoff into the lane drain and any impact on the surrounding community. So with that, we want the development. We'd love to see this go through, but we'd like to see a version of this that takes more consideration of the traffic and make sure that it's not going to impact the lane drain and additional flooding on the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Reese. I'm a resident of the Woodlands as well as Mr. Lipinski. I would like to point out that I think that the deceleration lane is inadequate. On the rendering on the plan that they showed up there, they had a great big red line of wattles across it. But if you take a look at it on the plan, you can see that about half of it is as wide as the sidewalk or less. And you've got a very busy corner, and people are going to turn around, and you're going to have cars parked up. And I think that the engineer's guesstimate that there was 3 or 4 cars that could be in that is that a guesstimate, and is an inaccurate guesstimate. And I think that this property, as the lady in the black there from the school, I don't know her name, but she said this is a challenging site, and she's right, it is. And if you walk on there, it is all below the street level, the sidewalk level, probably from 5 to 15 feet. For most of it. And so there's, the engineers said that, well, they have 500 units of earth put in from the other side. Well, what does the other side look like? We don't know. The flooding, as we've been here before, our neighbors have shown how that area floods. This year it's drier than it normally is because we have a drier winter. But the flooding and especially the traffic, cars coming around that corner, hitting traffic that is in an inadequate deceleration lane when rush hour traffic is the time that the school arrivals happen, and also the time that the departures happen. So, you know, it doubles the traffic, and it causes problems for the turning. And I think that the in-and-out egress that they give is essentially hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, can you sign in? Excuse me, yeah, could you sign in? And I believe that, Mr. Lipinski, did you sign in? You did, sorry, okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Come on up.
Bob Quigley, resident just north of the property on Fountain Drive. 3 quick points. I agree with the extent of the deceleration lane will not be sufficient. I mean, you're just way too close to Crooks to even expand that whatsoever. Secondly, was there any consideration of extending the north parking lot towards the north to accommodate the extra 10 or 11 parking spots instead of coming around the building? It appears there's a little bit more land there. I'm not sure about the drop off of elevation and drop to the wetlands, but there seems to be more room up into that northwest corner than there is behind the building. And then third point was, is there, and probably I see the orange retaining wall coming down towards the east back to the south. Was it investigated, is there room for that road to be extended back into Crooks to allow for a circular pattern within the property? I don't know if it can be done by either ordinance or just by training parents, but it almost seems impossible to honestly to come and make a left-hand turn out of that parking lot back onto Waddles and head eastbound. It's almost like you would have to tell people they enter from the right-hand side and they make a right-hand side turn out, because it's just the backup again on Waddles heading eastbound won't accommodate that left-hand turn. We'll have nothing but problems there. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll turn it back to discussion amongst the planning commissioners. Yes, Mr. Vox.
So just a real quick, I want to touch base with planning staff again. So OHM did review this plan, the city traffic consultant?
They reviewed the site plan and did not prepare any type of a traffic memo.
Okay, and then the engineering department reviewed the site plan at this point? Or- Okay. So the way that I hear that when the city's traffic experts and the engineering experts are both saying like thumbs up, this is good to go, that alleviates a lot of my concerns when it comes to traffic and flooding. Because their job of those two departments, you know, they live, breathe, and learn traffic and flooding. And they are under the impression that it will be fine. So I personally don't have concerns about the traffic flow or the flooding just based off of the expert review.
Yes, Mr. Faison.
I generally agree with what you said, but I have concern about the traffic, and I'd like to see the traffic study and and hear OHM's objective assessment of some of these issues that have been raised here today. I mean, turning out of that property and trying to go east on Waddles at some busy times of the day, I just envision that would be very problematic, and I'd like to see an objective assessment of that.
Yes, Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you. I too am not convinced about not having a traffic study on this one done. And the second thing is I'm still a little iffy about the traffic flow within this, although I know they make a case based on their previous locations and how the traffic flow has happened. I'm still a little iffy on that for me to say this is something that will get my vote. And one quick question to the applicant here. Any neighbors that you guys got to talk to in terms of any water issues, any flooding that they have experienced in that area? Has anything come up in your discussion, review? I know I could have asked this when you were up at the podium, I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm Jeff Schmitz. I'm the owner of JS Capital Group and of Premier Academy. Sorry I wasn't able to talk earlier. I just felt it was important. Maybe I talk now a little bit to answer some questions based on some of the neighbors. I had eye surgery yesterday, so I apologize if I'm not. Do I have a moment to talk about some of the issues? So we're taking, that floodplain, that 100-year, we're making it deeper, right? So we're gonna alleviate, we're going to take on more water because there's going to be more volume there. So it's going to help all the neighbors down the road, right? We're going to compensatory cut out of where you see that now. It's going to be deeper. It's going to be able to hold more water. Am I saying that correct? So that's going to help the community. And when you talk about the traffic studies, I think, you heard from your own experts that daycare doesn't really have an impact. So of all the schools, if you look at Goddard and some of those, they have the same number of parking. And if you look at all of our slides, I don't know how to access it, but every single school only has one means of egress and entrance, right? Only Rochester Hills, you see another entrance, but it's not. It's for a fire truck only. You can't access it from there. So when it comes to stacking, when you look at, our data, and we count cars every 10 minutes that comes through, we're staggered from 6 o'clock or 6:30 until, 9 o'clock when the class starts, right? So we have early and then after. And school ends at 3. It's not like you're going to an elementary school or a high school where, you start at 7:30 and you got this mad rush. We are slowly coming through the day, and then many of our students are only half day. So at noon, we're losing a whole bunch of students. If you look at 2 of the sites that we have, are the 2 busiest intersections in Oakland and Macomb County. We are on the hard corner of Adams and Tinkin Road, kitty corner from the high school and the middle school. After we have been open for 3 years, the residents have said there's been no increase in traffic, because if you were going to work, you're already on the road dropping your child off. So we're not adding any traffic. And so one of the other things that I wanted to talk about was the roads and traffic. I mean, those are not Troy's roads, they're Oakland County's roads, right? So if there was to be a question about traffic or widening the roads, that would be an issue with Oakland County, not Troy, because they own those roads and they monitor whether or not it's sufficient enough to have, a turning lane or a stacking lane for a left-hand turn there. So that, I think, is really important. But most importantly is this math and this model works. Now, I have in the past through other planning commissions did a video all day long, a Tuesday or a Wednesday or our biggest days, and there's a camera there, and you guys are welcome to see how many cars are stacking and leaving at the same time. And it's been proven that we've never had a stacking issue. The parent drops off, they're there maybe 5 minutes, they're back in their car and they're out. And it's never more than a few families at one time that walk through our door. And if you'd like video evidence of that, we're more than willing to provide it. And I think that kind of answered all the questions that I think many of you probably have had. But again, those are Oakland County roads, they're not Troy's roads. So if there's a problem, Oakland County's got to fix them.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yep. Mr. Hudson.
Again, I've been sitting here listening, and it seems to me one of the great concerns is stacking. And the stacking occurs when cars are lined up discharging their little wonderful children. Maybe it's time with this piece of property that the applicant ought to consider a little change in procedure, and that is, instead of having all the parents park their car, get your cargo out, take it into the school, pat them on the head, and leave again. Why not do just what a lot of high schools and junior highs do? Pull up, have someone from the school greet them, take the child by the hand, take them into the building. That's sure going to speed up any stacking of automobiles. Involve constructing roads.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Mr.
I just want to say, I think they know their business and their traffic flow better than anyone. They've been in business for how many years? 15 years. I'm going to rely on the city experts for traffic, and since OHM didn't bring forth a report of concerns, if they have concerns, they generally bring a report. Seeing none, I don't think there's a very grave or a super problem with their traffic situation. I think they know their business, they know their traffic. I'm content with what they've shown so far as handling traffic.
The concern is safety of. Just to quickly speak to your point, the concern as far as we've explored and thought about different items, you've got to remember our kids are little bitty. We've got newborn babies, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds. it's a safety, as far as just getting your little 1, 2-year-old that's new to school for the first time, separation anxiety. It's a hard transition with little ones and moms and drop off, and for a parent to hand their crying baby like, bye, we're outside in the cold to go, it sounds easy, but it's a lot easier said than done. And for as much as we would love to ease any relief to traffic by simply getting kids out and having a staff that just runs back and forth, for moms and dads and their little parent hearts that are breaking with their first little ones that are going to school, it's not as simple as that. And for us, we want our community to have that sense of security. We want the kids to come and feel welcomed and feel invited and know this is a safe spot for mom and dad to be able to drop us off to. That's where we don't do that for that reason.
I'd be surprised that I disagree with you.
That's fair.
Does anyone else have any, yep, Mr. Tagle.
A couple things. I'd like to agree with Mr. Krantz. These people have done this for 15 years. They come to us with data that they say is working. Our traffic consultant has said they do not see an issue. So I've got to rely on them. I am not a traffic expert, nor are we. And what we're not taking into consideration is the amount of flow and the timing of the flow. It's not like they're having whatever number of children and parents are dropping off coming within a short amount of time. So I'm not concerned so much with the traffic. As far as the flooding, I don't know if looking at the site plans, it became obvious to me that what they're grading northeast of the drain is more like a depressed area. So they're going to, like the gentleman in the white sweater said, they're going to create more volume to contain the water as opposed to pushing it back into the north or to the west. So again, I'm not concerned with that. Not an engineer, but I can certainly read the drawings and see what the design is. And I think the engineers will, if they have any questions or concerns, that will be taken care of in the final site plan review.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that, I was looking at, the zoning ordinance for daycare facilities does say a separate drop-off and pickup area shall be required adjacent to the main building entrance. So there's that. And then also the design standards talk about the primary entrance shall be clearly identifiable and usable and located in the front facade parallel to the street. So this is actually on the front entrance is actually on the facing west. So I just want to put that out there and see what other people think about that, because it does violate it's not what the zoning ordinance says. Yes.
So as you read the first about identifiable drop-off area, and they've identified parking spaces for dropping children off or where they would park. So I don't know that it is not in compliance with that requirement. Secondly, in this neighborhood node, when we're telling the petitioners to push this building to a zero lot line, it makes it very difficult and it would be very cumbersome to force someone to park and walk their child around to the Waddle side or the Crook side. So I understand what the language says, but the practicality of that, I think, gives us a little bit of latitude of interpretation and come up with the best plan we can.
Okay, that's a fair thing to say. My thought about it was, I don't know how we can allow a daycare in a neighborhood node and comply with that provision. They don't really go together because for obvious reasons, we're not going to walk kids around to the front and onto a main road. But I'm just saying, that's part of what we do. We got to at least talk about it. That's why I thought we had a little bit of latitude, and I suggested moving the building or even making it L-shaped and moving the entrance further off of the main road. I'm willing to accept a lot of the conversation about, they've done it, they know what they're doing, the parking spots and everything, but I drive that intersection probably 15 to 20 times every day. Okay, I mean, I do have a lot of kids, but I have a lot of activities, and there's the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school that require me to go through that intersection multiple times. And I know that when I know that the traffic stacks up, and I do have concerns that when people are coming to turn left onto Crooks, they're going to get caught behind cars trying to turn into the facility to either drop off or pick up their kids. So we do have a traffic consultant, but there's been many times that I haven't agreed with the studies done, and in the sense that we're talking about levels that are acceptable to us, and we have to determine if the traffic levels are acceptable. They were talking about, certain levels that were pushing not acceptable, and we were talking about it as that's the new norm. So, every time something's added to the community, incrementally over time, traffic increases. That's just a fact. So, several of us have mentioned that traffic is concerning. Yeah, go ahead.
May I respond?
Yes, of course.
Number one, I feel personally, this is my world, but this is one of the better architects we see in this community. And they've told us they've done a lot of studies. So for us to sit up here and ask them to reshape their building or to push their building around, I have a confidence level that these people have looked at the options and they feel with this site, this is the best option for operational and for impact. We also heard in Mr. Carlisle's report, this property could get a much heavier used development on this corner. So are we saying that this development, even though it's not as heavy as it could be, is not appropriate? It's because, let's be careful what we ask for here. We had this question a couple of meetings ago about another development where we denied a developer, but if he came back to us with a more intense use, we wouldn't really have much to deny him for. So I just want to point out that we need to look at this from a big picture item. That, again, I'm not going to repeat myself, but I'm not as concerned as some of my fellow commissioners are, certainly with the stormwater and with the traffic. Thank you.
I want to add to that,
Yep,
if
go
I
ahead.
may.
Mr. Powell.
As far as that idea of having the main entrance facing a major street, in this case Waddles, architecturally they put this nice peaked roof area that does face Waddles. That what we want to do is create an identifiable entrance to the building, and this is an architectural entrance, even though the actual entrance for humans is around the corner a little bit. But I think it fits the spirit of the ordinance.
Okay, I agree with that. Yep.
Excuse me, this intersection has two parcels which are vacant. One will probably always remain in use, which is Whitechapel. The other is the southwest corner. And this project tonight is going to generate some traffic, but no matter what goes in that site, there's going to be traffic. And what you ought to be thinking about is what's going to happen on that southwest corner. When someone wants to, in the double N node, put in a project that may have a lot more traffic than what we're looking at this. This is off hour too, traffic mainly. And, coming down Livernois, I think it's in Rochester Hills, there's a elementary school or a junior high school on the western side of Livernois. And at 3:30, you have cars stacked up to Livernois on Crooks, waiting to pick up their kids. And that's a fact of civilization, I'm afraid, that we're just going to have to put up with it and do the best we can.
Yes, Mr. Lambert.
I wanted to follow up with city staff with our chair's questions about the daycare requirements. Are we not following the ordinance there and as far as pick-up and drop-off areas?
The standards for daycare require pickup and drop-off areas, but it doesn't say it has to be a loop. What we've heard from the daycare community is, like what we just heard this evening, it works for some daycares where there's a greeter, if you will. They open the door and assist with the child, taking the child out, and et cetera. But more times than not, when we meet with daycare operators, what they prefer is dedicated areas like they propose here, where you pull in, you park your car, you take the key out of the ignition, walk the child in, pat them on the head or whatever, however they described it, and then 5 minutes later you leave. That's also a dedicated drop-off and pickup area. It's not the formal loop, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, kind of following some of the points Mr. Tagle made, it kind of just occurred to me, again, this is a neighborhood node zoning, so hypothetically, you know, townhomes, multifamily housing buildings, I mean, there's a lot of higher density, like higher traffic impact builds that could potentially go in here, so I'm of the opinion that a school, at least, of all the options that could end up going into the neighborhood node zoning, would at least have the most minimum impact on the traffic. But
Yes.
I'm ready to make a resolution.
Okay.
That preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Premier Academy Troy Daycare Center and preschool located on the northwest corner of Crooks and Waddles, pin number 88-20-17-476-056 and 57 and 61, Section 17, Zone NN, Neighborhood Node I, zoning district be granted, subject to the following: obtain LOMA prior to final engineering approval, obtain Eagle wetland permit if necessary, prior to final engineering approval, provide the bicycle parking.
I think they provided the bicycle.
Okay, fine.
Second.
Yes, discussion, Mr. Lambert?
Do we want to include something in there about the lighting and the impact on the adjoining residential neighbors? I don't know, Mr. Carlisle said something could be put in there maybe about some kind of a timing device.
Does that need to go in the resolution, or is that standard?
It's NOR's requirement, so it wouldn't necessarily need to be in a resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone want to have any discussion about the resolution? Is there anything else we wanted to add? Yep, go ahead.
I was going to add that my concerns primarily were with the impact of the parking spots on that north side, but I believe based upon the comments by the petitioners that they're going to make efforts to not only not make the flooding worse, but they're actually going to dig out the some of the ground so it improves the drainage in that area. And secondly, compared to some other alternative uses that could be put on that spot, that this proposal is much better than what could have been put there.
Yes, Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yeah, after hearing from some of my illuminated colleagues here, I would say, yes, I do agree. This is a low-intense use for that area. I was a little concerned about the traffic, in all honesty, stacking, but I think I'm convinced by the studies that you presented and by the statements made here, so I'm comfortable giving it a yes.
Mr. Faison?
So I get the argument about this being a less intense use than what might come afterwards if this isn't approved. But I guess my thought is, and again, I'm just saying I'd like to see evidence that the traffic is not a problem. But if the traffic is a problem for this facility, wouldn't it also be a problem for a more intense use? And so therefore we would not need to approve that more intense use. So I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. That something more intense could come, right? Because if traffic is an issue, it's going to be an issue with that more intense use as well. So I'm not convinced that that's the alternative. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not the chair. I was about to call on someone else to speak.
Let me ask you something follow-up, though, because I didn't quite follow what you were, what's your conclusion? I mean, I didn't quite understand.
My conclusion is if we think the parking might be a problem for this, then the parking will certainly be a problem for it's more likely that the parking will be a problem for a more intense use. So my argument, I'm not concluding that not the parking, the traffic. I'm not concluding that the traffic is a problem. I'm just saying I'd like to see evidence that the traffic is not a problem.
So you're not ready to approve tonight on that basis?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I'm going back and forth, if I'm being honest, because, the ordinance says, to not create congestion on the site or within a public roadway. They're convinced that it's not doing that, and they've expressed their experience, and I'm willing to accept that. And I'm also aware that something more, something else could come that would cause more traffic that would be worse, and I can't think of many things that would be less intrusive. So, I'm not sure. Mr. Fox?
Oh, yeah. I think one thing that I'm realizing we haven't touched on yet is I like the improvements to the pedestrian circulation. I mean, we've seen how many neighborhoods are right in that immediate area, and I would imagine, yes, traffic is obviously a concern. A lot of folks are going to want to drive, but I would at least think that during warmer months, you get folks who walk from the neighborhood surrounding the school to this, or the preschool, the child care facility. You get folks that walk there. So that's interesting. I think it almost being nestled around neighborhoods kind of helps with that, where you're going to get more walking.
Well, at a minimum, it'll improve the sidewalks that are terrible there now, and there's a 7-Eleven on the opposite corner, so people will be happy about that. Anything, Mr. Tagle, did you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Are we ready for the vote?
Sure.
All right.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, and accolades to the architect for those buildings.
Mr.
Needs a little dressing up, and I think that'll do it.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malalahali?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
No.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I think we move on now to public comments for items that are on the agenda. I know we already did that, but we have it reserved for after the vote's taken place as well. It looks like we have someone coming up. Just make sure you sign in.
Hi, my name is Paul Bayless, and I also live in Woodlands of Troy subdivision. I guess it's a little scary to say that's the least worst thing, and that was the basis for approval. A couple other things. The traffic trying to get out of our subdivision, turning left, is just horrendous, probably 3/4 of the day. So we're now going to add another lane of traffic trying to take a left into the parking lot of the academy. I agree, it's a beautiful building and not a bad use of the property, but just traffic is already horrendous. And I guess other thought, when I spoke to my daughter this afternoon, she said, at least you won't have to worry about going to many planning committee meetings because there's no green space left in Troy to worry about anymore. And I guess the comment about Oakland County is responsible for the roads was a little disingenuous when, we're the ones that are actually going to be driving on those roads. So yeah, let's get Oakland County, whatever structure that is, to come and take a look also. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Come up to the mic, though, so we can, and we also like for you to...
My name is James Geisinger, and I live in the area. I'm the president of the Somerset North subdivision. And I guess my question is there enough land on Waddles to expand that intersection? Because I can tell you unequivocally, if the development occurs across Waddles, they're going to have to put in right and left-hand turning lanes eventually. Is that land available? Or we just don't know that? Is the land available?
Well, we're not supposed to have a back and forth. You can.
Oh, I
you can
apologize.
speak, and then
Yeah.
we'll have the planning
so
department respond.
This idea of that 2 or 3 lane, what's it referred to? The deceleration lane. That's going to be backed up. I travel through there, so there's probably going to need to have a right-hand lane in there, okay, eventually. And then on the other side, so right now it's 1 lane each way and then a left turn lane. I guess my comment is that eventually there's going to have to be 2 new lanes. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Well, can you sign in place?
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we need to respond to that. I mean, I think really what happens is when we get an application for the other corner, then we'll reevaluate with the traffic, noting what's on the other corner.
I don't design roads. It's a 120-foot right-of-way, it looks like. It looks like there's a room for some expansion. Whether that's in the budget, whether it's warranted at this time, that's a question for the civil engineer, not myself.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to Planning Commission comment, and we will start with Mr. Carlisle.
The master plan. I can do it.
No comment.
Okay. Mr. Savedon.
I wanted him to say this, but the master plan, as you all know, I think it was December 12th that the Plan Commission recommended approval of the master plan. Went before City Council. They considered the master plan. If you watched the meeting, there was a lot of questions for Ben and I. They took no action on the document. They had some concerns. We asked for City Council to provide clear direction and provide us with their concerns to the city manager and the city attorney in writing. They did so. It's going to be on the City Council agenda for consideration on Monday, and we'll have a memo and a resolution or resolutions to address their concerns. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
I heard a rumor that they wanted to have a joint meeting with City Council and Planning Commission. Is that a false rumor?
There's the City Council.
Am I putting you on the spot? Sorry, Brent.
It's been a long day, just like for me as it has for everyone else. Words. They speak by resolution. I believe one of the City Council members suggested that, but we have not been communicated to by City Council by resolution asking us for a joint meeting.
So is that something that Planning Commission can request of City Council? I mean, I'm just spitballing. I mean, if they have concerns about what this body has done, it makes sense to me to have a joint meeting. Usually the meeting request flows down from City Council to Planning Commission, but can Planning Commission request that meeting?
Planning Commission can request a meeting. They can't schedule one, but they can request one.
Just saying. Okay, thank you.
So, does anyone want to request a meeting with City Council?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right.
I would like to make a motion to formally.
Wait, I think we should wait until, I was just saying, we see what their comments are. I mean, their comments might be something that you can address.
So we haven't even prepared the memo yet for City Council for Monday, so do what you want. You know, you vote, but I think there's merit in waiting to see what resolution the City Council moves forward.
I apologize. I misunderstood. I thought you were implying that it might be helpful to meet with them before they make their decision on Monday.
No, that's not what I was suggesting. I was just suggesting that if there's consternation at City Council about whatever, it might be instructive to have a meeting. But we don't know what that consternation is until we see the memo and we see the questions.
So City Council on Monday could wait, see the memo, and then ask for a meeting without making any decision, you're saying? There's no timeline on their decision? Okay. All right, that makes sense. Okay, Mr. Tagle.
No comments.
Mr. Kren?
Got one.
Yep.
Oakland County's having another planners gathering. It's going to be a quick webinar from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on February 28th. The subject is talking about sidewalk maintenance and what's being done in other cities in Oakland County. And if you want to tune into what other cities are doing about their sidewalk maintenance, it'd be a good idea to take a look at it. If you're not familiar with the planners gatherings that Oakland County has, you can go to their website and there's a link and click on it and you can register to attend that webinar.
Thank you. Ms. Malala-Holly?
No comment.
Just
Bill
two
Lambert.
things. One is a follow-up to Mr. Savident's discussion on the master plan. I did watch the whole meeting, including the time that he and Mr. Carlisle had to face the music from City Council. First, he forgot to tell us that Councilwoman Hoderick was very apologetic and hoped that he would pass on their sentiments, that they weren't mad or disappointed with us. But Mr. Savident says, I can assure you some members of Planning Commission do watch City Council meetings. So, and secondly, the mayor did indicate that even though he had some concerns about the master plan document, he was apologetic because he said maybe it was our fault because we didn't give correct directions to the Planning Commission. So I think hopefully we'll get some progress on Monday night, but I'm sure it will depend upon our friends, Mr. Savident and Mr. Carlisle, to do a great presentation and allay the concerns of City Council. Secondly, I'm almost ready to do my presentation for the Citizens Planner. Is there time on the agenda for the next meeting in 2 weeks to do that, or is it pretty full agenda, you want me to wait?
I think we only have one meeting in March.
I mean, one more in February, or one more in February. 2 weeks from tonight's February.
We have one.
Oh, that's right, maybe that's the presidential primary.
Yeah,
So, okay, March then.
You want to do it in March?
Yeah, if there's room.
I think there is. Can I confirm that later? Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Faison?
Nothing from me.
Mr. Hudson?
I am still trying to figure out all this conversation regarding the master plan and city council and the planning commission, and doesn't somebody want to tell me what we're all talking about? I guess not.
You can watch the replay.
If you want to.
Who wants to take that question?
I was hoping Mr. Lambert would volunteer.
You were there, so you can.
There was. I don't want to misrepresent what 7 elected officials said over the course of almost an hour. There were concerns and questions, some associated with 2 of the neighborhood nodes.
Oh.
As well as another, some other concerns. That the focus seemed to be, for concerns seemed to be on at least 2 neighborhood nodes.
Yeah, Brent, you gone far enough. I think I get the gist, and that's okay.
Again, there was back and forth for Mr. Lambert about 50 minutes, plus or minus.
Oh, yes, at least.
Okay.
Mr. Fox?
All good.
Sarnecki?
None, thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything further either, so I guess we're adjourned.
Yep.